Iraq's Foreign Minister Mohammed al-Hakim met US diplomats in Baghdad on Wednesday night for what the Foreign Ministry said were talks about promoting bilateral ties, resolving regional crises and tackling terrorism. But no one in Iraq is under any illusion about what that means. The increasing pressure by the US on Iraq's neighbour and biggest regional ally, Iran. Iraq's politics, economy, military and majority Shia population share deep geopolitical and religious ties with Iran. The more pressure that mounts on the Iranian government, the more difficult it becomes for US ally Iraq. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo came to Iraq on an unscheduled visit on Tuesday because of what he said were specific threats to Americans in Iraq. The statement was directed towards what the US calls Iran's proxy forces. Officially, there are around 60,000 Iraqi fighters with pro-Iran armed groups in Iraq, known as the Popular Mobilisation Forces, or al-Shaabi. They were highly effective in the battle against ISIL in Iraq and Syria and were formally incorporated into Iraq's military and security apparatus in 2016. On Wednesday evening, one al-Shaabi commander in Diyala province said any attack by the US on Iran would be met with attacks on US interests in Iraq.
Although al-Shaabi is considered part of the military establishment, there are still armed groups that are difficult to control. The government suffers because these groups have so many weapons.
There are around 5,200 US servicemen and women in Iraq. President Trump said in February US forces should stay in Iraq to keep an eye on Iran. Iraqi Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi says Iraq will continue a balanced policy that builds bridges of cooperation and friendship with all neighbors, including Iran.
Iraq is facing a dangerous situation. It is under both US and Iranian pressure. But Iraq could play a negotiating role between the US and Iran, and between Saudi Arabia and Iran. I believe there is an acceptance for that role to be played.
Iraqi politicians and influential religious leaders here have repeatedly said they will not tolerate any threat to Iraq's sovereignty by any nation, including Iran. After decades of conflict and political instability here, the US-Iran crisis is presenting the Baghdad government with a delicate diplomatic challenge where any mistake by Washington, Tehran, or indeed pro-Iran armed groups here could mean the Iraqi people being the victims of violence again. Stratford, Al Jazeera, Baghdad.